Today, every day, small cap investors visit Agoracom knowing this is the day to discover the world's next great company, to have their dreams come true. That's why I take to the open road, to find them, to tell their stories, to engage them, to bring them to life, because they want to connect with you from your office, your phone, your home, anywhere. Agoracom, find your dream.
Welcome to Beyond the Press Release, our production of Agoracom, in which we take the time to speak with small cap executives about big news at their companies, and big news is being had at PyroGenesis Canada. With us again, we're happy to have Peter Pascali, President and CEO of the company, trades on the TSX Venture Exchange under the stock symbol PYR. For our friends in the US, PYRNF, that's on the OTCQB, and for our friends in Europe, in Germany on the Frankfurt Exchange under 8PY. Now, for those of you who are new to the story, PyroGenesis is a multiple recipient of the TSX Venture 50 recognition in the past. They're a world leader in advanced plasma processes. We'll get to that in a bit, but they're achieving global success in multiple applications with their technology with some of the world's biggest companies and organizations. More than just lip service, the technology is already used on US aircraft carriers, successfully tested by DARPA. Their titanium powders for advanced 3D printing are receiving major orders from the world's biggest companies, and they've now been nominated Materials Company of the Year at the 3D Printing Industry Awards for a second year in a row. We're here to talk about a big $20 million contract that looks like it's going to be coming to the company. Peter, welcome to the show.
Thanks, George. Thanks for having us back. It's a pleasure to be here again.
Well, when you announced this kind of headline, I'm going to read it for the benefit of people who haven't seen it yet. PyroGenesis announces potential contract over $20 million in first-year revenues plus significant subsequent year revenues. That's pretty massive for any company, let alone a small cap. Before we get into some of the details, this is worth $20 million in the first year from what you've told us, and we already know the total value of this could be $50 to $70 million in subsequent years. What does this mean for you? How big is this for the company?
George, as we mentioned, it will be, if we get it, and we expect that we'll get it, is the largest contract in company history. It's over 3 times last year's revenue. Our first year revenue from this contract alone will be more than 3 times last year's revenue. It obviously makes the company profitable, so it's very significant. It's very significant from that aspect, but also from once we understand that we can divulge what industry it is, and it really underscores what we're doing in that industry as well.
Now, you have to be a little bit mysterious about this press release, about this contract, because it hasn't been awarded yet. So the question I'm going to ask you, playing devil's advocate, is you've announced its imminence, but you also say in the press release, if awarded. So why come out now and announce it if you don't know for certain yet that it's been awarded?
Well, George, that's a very good question, and it has to do with our liability, not our liability, the requirement that if we feel that we have some material information, that we have to disclose it. The material information is that we're very much within grasp of a very large contract which will change the company. And the probability is not 100%, but it's high enough and close enough that we think it requires us to divulge it.
Well, what's the window then? Imminent.
But there's also something else I want to explain that, George, if please. I may take this opportunity. I also I personally believe I have a duty to our investor base, the people who've actually invested in us. And they should know that if they want to sell, I mean, if they've invested, they want to sell, that they have as much information as they could to make that decision. Now, it's not 100%, but I think they'd be happy to know that there is a high possibility that it would happen shortly. So that's why we decided to press release that.
Yeah, and I guess something of this magnitude, it's hard to hold something like this of this magnitude secret for very long. So it probably is a pretty responsible thing to do.
And so, there's also people on the other side of the table, George, who may have some information and they're not necessarily living in the same geographic area as we are and beholden to the same rules. So I would hate to have an investor who's been loyal to me sell into a marketplace where there's others that may be acting with other information.
Yeah, and I got to admit that's pretty big of you, because at the same time you do kind of take the risk of what happens if it does get awarded, but you're putting principle over your own needs.
And let's look several weeks later. Let's say it's announced, and somebody in the interim had sold their shares. I'm sure they would say, "Damn, I wish I knew that that was at least, a possibility, and that was there was some possibility of that happening." So we think it's material enough that. And the probability is high enough that people should be made aware of it.
Right, and I'm assuming you have a lot of other smaller agreements, smaller discussions that may or may not be imminent, but those aren't really material, so you don't feel the need. But this one stood out amongst all the other ones because, like you said, relatively speaking, it's triple your entire last year revenue, and you want to make sure people know that.
Exactly.
Let's define imminent now. So, what's the window in which you think investors, now that you've announced this, what's the window in which investors should be looking for the thumbs up or thumbs down on the final award? Is it a week? Is it a month? Is it?
That's interesting.
3 months?
That's also another interesting question. I don't read the blogs, George, but people that work with me do, and apparently this has been a question. What does imminent mean? And I think the word has to be taken in the context of the company and the contract and what we're talking, and a number of elements. If you're a tortoise that lives 120 years, your vision of imminent may be different from a mayfly that lives for 24 hours.
Sure.
Okay. So you have to, when you say imminent, take it in with a certain within the context. Now, I think we press released this 2 weeks ago yesterday. And people are wondering why I haven't said anything else. I mean, give me a break. First of all, take also the impact that the news will have. So, do you really care whether it's 3 weeks, 4 weeks, or 5 weeks? Do you really care when something that big is being announced, that game changing? Is it going to be 3 months out? No, that's not what I mean by imminent. Okay, right. Imminent to me means well within 3 months. So a few
weeks, I guess it's fair to say, because I know that nobody in your position could give us a specific timeline. But is it fair to say a few weeks from when you made the announcement would be a fair?
What I said was in the press release, if I recall properly, that and I tried to give as detailed a timeline as I could, and I believe, and don't hold me to it, but I do believe what I said was the formal acknowledgement that we won the contract should be imminent, and then we should get a contract to make sure it reflects everything we agreed upon, going back and forth. So there'll be some discussions there. So a formal acknowledgement is first, and imminent. Okay. That's the big news, in my opinion. That's the big news.
Sure.
Then a contract to formalize the discussion.
Understanding. Okay.
And then the signing of that contract. Now, because it's a multiple year contract, and as you noted, George, the first year is $20 million in revenues, and subsequent years, if you do a 5% discount, there's an additional $30 to $50 million, and the reason is because there's some options in there, making it a $50 to $70 million net present value of a 5% discount value to the company right now. So it's not a trivial contract. It's going to be a contract. And again, we have to protect the company and the investors properly. And so I suspect, again, I suspect just to negotiate that contract and go back and forth with the different time zones, my guess is a month. I don't see why it would go beyond a month. So George, but I don't want to be beholden to a month. If it's 31 days, I don't want people to start getting nervous. Again, taking the context of what we're discussing, whether it's 30 days to do the contract or 2 months to do the contract is so huge that I think that the difference of a week or two here or there gets lost in the news.
And to be clear, that would be after you've received and announced formally being awarded the contract.
That's
so
correct. And I think that's where the big,
that, then you need a month or two, several weeks just to formalize the contract.
exactly.
So on that note, let me ask you another question. So we're looking at imminent few weeks to actually get it officially awarded, and then several weeks to hammer out the details of the contract. So assuming all this gets done on a contract of this magnitude, when would you expect to start recording revenues from it? Is it the kind of thing that would kick off right away after a contract was done, or do you need a 6-month ramp up time and lead?
Immediately.
Okay, so in 2019, you expect to be receiving revenue from this and reporting revenue from it?
I would expect that the next full quarter after the announcement would be profitable.
All right. Let's move on to a separate question about the private placement. You stated in the press release that the contract didn't require much in the way of CapEx, capital expenditures, or OpEx, operational expenditures. So why the raise for $2.5 million?
So when I say CapEx, by the way, George, I'm talking about infrastructure.
Of course.
Infrastructure, like we don't need a building or new equipment or things like that.
So what's the reason for it? Is it just good time to raise money for the coffers, or was that some of that money required to actually execute this agreement?
No, actually, it's because, George, I got really nervous. And I'll explain to you why. There's a number of things that impact the decision, like doing a raise, particularly at this time on the back of such a great news. Why would someone do a raise? Well, as you know, our stock started going up.
Of course.
So there's a number of things I told you. So our stock is going up, and a stock like ours, if you want to do a raise, let's say, okay, let's back up. When we're trading between 60 and 70 cents for the longest time, it was easy to do a raise because investors are confident that the stock, because they get restricted shares, that in 4 months, the stock should generally be in this area. They're confident, so they're willing to take the risk. As your stock increases, let's just take a crazy example, that going to $1.50, and let's say you want to do a raise, the investors are, hold on a second, let's wait a bit, the stock should settle back down. They're not so confident that the stock's going to be in that range for the next 4 months, notwithstanding what the news is.
And that has happened, right? The stock starts going 80 cents, 90 cents, $1, and suddenly the private placement guys, if you announce a private placement too late, say, well, your stock's been on a run. I don't want to buy this into a run.
Exactly. So it's a natural knee-jerk reaction to a stock going up fast. So it's kind of funny, as the stock goes up faster, sometimes to do a private placement is more difficult.
It always is, actually. I'll tell you, and I'll tell everyone at home, because I've been involved with hundreds of companies. The finance guys don't like it when it takes off before they're able to get in, and unfortunately, the people who write the checks are the people who call the shots at the end of the day until you're so big.
So the question is, who buys that? Now, there's oftentimes investors, George, as you know, who say, listen, I like the story, it's 60 cents, but I prefer to buy it at $1.20 when the contract's real. So those are the type of people that you'd probably sell into at that stage. We haven't been speaking those type of people because we didn't anticipate this type of news coming so quickly.
Yeah, you're not at that level yet.
Then there was a second element. The Dow Jones has been really, really, really finicky these days. As you know, it's been
very volatile.
And when that happens, investors typically are, they sit on the sidelines. The sky is falling. Is this the beginning of something bigger? So you have this playing at the same time. And George, we're going into the summer months, which is a typical slow period.
Yeah.
I
was about to mention that. I was going to say that had to be a third element, because once July 1st comes, people are pretty much all but gone in the finance world.
So you've got a stock that's taking off. You've got a Dow Jones that's really being finicky and getting people nervous. You got the summer months coming on, and I got this great contract imminent, and I have also the U.S. Navy in the background. So I see the goal line is very close. I don't want to trip up for a couple of $1 million, that I might need for some reason or another.
I'm going to play devil's advocate also, though.
Sure.
Is this an insider-friendly kind of private placement where you guys get to, because and which is fantastic, by the way, you put your money where your mouth is in the last 2 private placements. Is this just an insider-friendly private placement where it's also
There's
convenient
no insiders at all in this
position yourself?
There's no insiders at all. I'm not investing in it. I'm precluded from investing in it. Arguably, Everything we know about this particular contract is in the marketplace. However, from a moral perspective, there's a lot of people in the company that I've precluded from it. There's a couple of employees that might participate who are not in the know, and no directors, no upper management.
Okay, that says a lot. That says a lot, Peter. I got to give you guys credit. The fact that
so there's absolutely no insiders.
Right, that tells me a lot. And by the way, it also tells me a lot about the status. That's a great piece of, I didn't realize this, but that's a great anecdotal piece of information as to the gravity of this potential contract. When you're prohibiting the board and yourself and upper management from actually participating in this private placement because of what you guys actually know, which is we know the generalities, what you're explaining, sharing the press release, this interview, but that tells me a lot about the gravity of this press release. So thanks for clarifying that. First of all, that's great to know that this money is going to be purely arm's length, with the exception of a couple of employees who aren't in the know. But on top of that, to explain the gravity. So, Peter, any last words? Because I think we've covered as much as we can cover without you spilling the beans. Unless you want to do it right here, tell us a specific about who it is. I know you're not. What's the last word, for everybody at home? And then I'm sure, from the sounds of it, you're going to be back on pretty soon.
The company is really well placed, George. We can now see significant revenues coming down the line imminently, to borrow a phrase. And we're very happy and very thankful to our existing shareholder base that's had confidence in us for many, many years. And I look forward to getting on here in the near future, George.
Well, Peter, I got to tell you, the next several weeks, it seems like if all goes well, and if is the operative word there for everyone watching at home, so they don't think we're already, counting our chickens. But if all goes well, these are game-changing weeks for the company, given the size of these revenues relative to your past revenue. So we'll cross fingers and wishing you a lot of luck with that.
From your lips to God's ears, George. Thanks a lot.
You've been watching Peter Pascali, President and CEO over at PyroGenesis Canada. The company trades on the TSX Venture Exchange on the stock symbol PYR, in the US, PYRNF, and in Frankfurt under 8PY. Do your due diligence. You've read the press releases. You've watched Peter. You've listened to Peter. And now get to Agoracom. Get deeper into the information there. Watch a couple of our previous interviews, and then post your questions. Peter has made himself accessible, and that's a great sign when CEOs make themselves accessible online to ask shareholder questions. So take advantage of that tool. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Have a great day. Do your due diligence. See you next time.